Welcome to 25 Minutes with Cap. We're out here in Chicago with Tim Turner, CEO of Ryan Specialty. Tim, thanks for joining us. Tim's got 37 plus years in the insurance industry. We're going to hear about that, what's going on, what's next in the E&S business. Just a reminder, podcast is the property of CapSpecialty. Any use of it must be with our prior written approval. You can get that at marketing@capspecialty.com. So Tim, hey, thanks for joining us. So, I mentioned 37 plus years experience, a lot of that in the brokerage space. You're now running all of Ryan Specialty. There's been so much focus now in the program business, the MGA business. Coming from the brokerage side, what are the similarities between the two businesses?
Well, first of all, great to be with you, Adam.
You too.
It's a pleasure to be here. Well, throughout my 37-year career in mostly the wholesale brokerage arena, I was immersed and involved in lots of delegated underwriting authority practices, whether they were MGUs, binding authorities were always part of those platforms. So I was very, very much experienced in that area. But the commonality and the connection there is that you're constantly around the most talented underwriters in the wholesale specialty market. So you know who the great underwriters are versus ones that may not be up to speed and have quite the experience that they need. It's really the big leagues of underwriting, and you really have to be a specialty, dedicated E&S underwriter. So we had a lot of experience with that throughout my career, and certainly the last 15 with Pat Ryan, I've had tremendous exposure to that. Right from the beginning, Pat wanted to dedicate the company to wholesale broking and delegated underwriting authority, and not just MGUs and MGAs, a national program division, and of course, a traditional binding authority. But today, that's not enough. You really need electronic trading capabilities. You need 50-state capabilities. And because of this drastic increase in the percentage of non-admitted property and casualty, you need all this quality of depth and breadth and everything that you do to capture an industry-leading share of the volume.
What were you seeing 15 years ago? What were you and Pat seeing that saw this happening?
Well, Pat saw a lot of this before I did, but we both knew that data analytics would play a big role in the consolidation of the use of intermediaries on behalf of retailers, whether they were global, national, regional, tier 1, 2, or 3. They had an inefficiency problem with using too many intermediaries. And so the RFP era for wholesale brokers in tier 1 was well on its way when I met Pat at the end of 2009. And he had this vast experience that involved wholesaling and delegated underwriting authority. So we knew what we needed to do to set the company up in practice group, vertical integration, alignment with our retailers, and to really augment delegated underwriting authority in the 3 main parts of it, binding, programs, and MGUs in the verticals with the brokers. So if you look at, our platform today, it really follows the most frequently used practice group verticals by the retailers. So whether it's construction, cat property, professional liability, we've built and have acquired lots of delegated underwriting authority in each of those key verticals. So it strengthens our value proposition with our retail brokers and allows us to distribute a lot more product with our carrier partners.
What's two things that you were surprised at getting involved in that part of the business? What's one thing, maybe you expected it to be a certain way, but you were surprised that it was this way?
Well, I was pleasantly surprised at how much Pat Ryan knew about delegated underwriting authority. That was a blessing. But I would say the speed at which the retail brokers, certainly in tier 1, were planning to consolidate their use of intermediaries and how sophisticated that process became. And so by 2010, 11 and 12, wasn't just the global retailers, the nationals, it was almost every regional and tier one, the top 100, who had different versions of RFPs where you had to qualify on the brokerage side of the business, not the delegated underwriting authority. It took another 10 years
Sure.
really for any of us to be developed enough to qualify for a expected and anticipated RFP and delegated underwriting authority. So really it was a race to make sure we had the best brokers in the key practice group verticals, which we did. Principally the first 5, 6, 7 years, our
Right.
acquisitions were more aligned with that goal in mind. And then shifting to more hybrids, binding authorities and brokers, second and third tier cities where we needed, more of the hub and spoke approach to it. We needed more depth and breadth. And throughout that first 10 years, the percentage of non-admitted business was growing exponentially, right
Right.
under our feet. So we know, looking back in history, that hard and soft market cycles, the percentage of non-admitted business would grow from 2 or 3% to maybe 7 or 8%. This was way beyond that. The dumping and the shedding that was taking place in that decade was record breaking. Every year, more and more business was shed and dumped into the E&S market. So the shape and the structure of the E&S market was changing rapidly through that first 10 years.
As that happens, do you ever see friction between the two sides, between the brokerage side and the program side of the business?
A little bit. There's always, you're always looking for channel conflict and
Sure.
distribution friction to keep it at a minimum as you're navigating through these practice groups and building these platforms and facilities. But it was really more about, reacting to the way the companies were distributing. So
Right.
we went from a handful of wholesale dedicated E&S companies to over 100 during that same period of time. So there was a lot of structural changes in the business that, allowed E&S to get a stronger foothold, principally led by the largest standard companies buying E&S companies.
Sure.
So the traditional way of that business maybe migrating back to the standard side of the business wasn't as prolific, it wasn't as visible. And I think that's because the structure of the industry changed significantly during that 10 years. So today you have a very clear channel of non-admitted P&C distribution and broking and underwriting.
So you talk about this business being dumped into the channel. Do you see it being cyclical and going back, or in some respects, is it here to stay?
I think that many of the high hazard classes of business, and i.e. the loss leaders in the reinsurance world that are doing the most damage to the balance sheets, with nuclear verdicts
Sure.
and runaway loss cost adjustment factors. I think that business is probably here to stay. But there's always that business that comes to us for a short period of time. And once rate adequacy can be reached, that business does migrate back to the standard market. And so we saw that a little bit in public D&O.
Sure.
We see that a little bit in cyber. But when, you have that movement, there's 2 or 3 other segments where you have a niche firming phenomenon where the business is going the other way. So consistently now for 6, 7 years, the percentage of non-admitted business, the flow into the channel, has been double-digit growth. We don't see that changing, principally because of the 2 drivers on the casualty side: social inflation, nuclear verdicts.
Business is just tougher.
It's not going away. Financed litigation, and of course, on the property side, global warming. It's not going away, unfortunately. So more and more business is, being pushed into the non-admitted market, where we have obviously the freedom of rate and form, where we can respond to the needs of those insureds. And, it's become a lot more sophisticated now. Broking and delegated underwriting authority, and many of these specialty channels are woven together.
How so? How is it more sophisticated?
You really have to have technicians.
Mm.
There's no such thing as generalists. Early in my career, the first decade or 15 years, half of it, there were a lot of generalists. lots of brokers that were doing property and casualty. I mean, you don't see any of that today.
Right.
Not in tier one. It's real specialized, very narrow, much like medical doctors, very, very precise dedication to a class of business. And so that's elevated, the execution of the deliverable. And in many cases, retailers will outsource that because it's so much stronger and so much deeper than anything they could build. But there's obviously big retailers that can do it themselves, and some of that business moves back. But there always seems to be a new class of business that has a firming nature to it. So we shift, and we're a lot quicker today as an industry because of data analytics. We can see these firming niches a lot faster than we could 10, 15 years ago. So we can move capital, we can move resources into those channels and respond much quicker for our customers.
How much bigger is the space gonna be?
Well, that's good question. It's continuing to grow. As of today, it's double-digit growth continues. The stamping offices are reporting that. We see the demand for our services, not just in brokerage, but in delegated underwriting authority. For the first time, I think we're on the precipice of seeing retail brokers consolidate their use of delegated underwriting authority intermediaries. That wasn't possible 5 or 10 years ago. The industry wasn't big enough. It wasn't broad enough. It wasn't deep enough. Today, there's a few of us that have that capability. And you really have to be big again in binding programs and MGUs and MGAs to capture that business. A lot of it's filled with proprietary product. So there's, it's harder to move it, compared to brokerage business. So it requires a huge investment to build a deep enough bench to facilitate a consolidation process.
Certainly there's acquisition and consolidation of that business. Do you also think there's just gonna be organic growth? Do you see there just being more brokers taking shape, more MGAs taking shape to take the opportunity?
I do, especially in the delegated underwriting authority space where you have factors like AI that are moving in quickly, electronic trading platforms. We have one, others have them. The capabilities and the ability of the industry to respond to those clients' needs by consolidating. These clients need to eliminate these frictional costs that are directly tied to regulatory compliance, E&O issues. They all want to elevate the deliverable, the solution itself. So you need the technical expertise, you need the broking, you need the underwriting all in one. And I don't think that's going to change. I think the momentum into that non-admitted P&C channel on both those pistons, if you will, is pretty strong. I don't see it changing.
So the business, let's talk about the business gotten tougher. We've seen different changes to how the admitted businesses has come into the non-admitted channel. Certainly some of its price, some of its terms and conditions, and a lot of it is limit compression. How are you seeing limit compression changing how people are acting, how brokers are acting?
It's a great question, Adam, and one that is definitely a factor in the migration of the business and the flow. This era of putting up an outsized limit, whether it was 10, 15, in many cases, 25 million, 3, 4 carriers, filling out a tower.
Yeah.
I believe those days are long gone.
Not coming back.
I don't believe so. I think it's too dangerous and too risky to put up an oversized limit in these higher hazard, channels that we're in. These loss leaders in the reinsurance world have done so much damage to the balance sheets of standard companies. They lead by compressing their limits. That business dumps into our channel. And I've never seen more 5 million limit opportunities in the excess casualty market and shared and layered opportunities in the property market in my entire career as a result of that. So there's an incredible amount of discipline in the underwriting community today and respect for limits management. So we're seeing that at an all-time high.
Hmm.
Many of these specialty niches that we're in, we need dozens of carriers. We need all 100+ of these non-admitted wholesale dedicated markets to fill out these towers. It's definitely a change, a real change in how the business is structured and distributed today.
With limit compression, do you think there'll be a migration back toward standardized business, or people are gonna continue to do the business non-admitted?
I think, again, when loss environments improve and risk management improves and rate adequacy is reached, some of that business will move back to the admitted market.
Right,
The filings and classes of business like transportation, the industry's behind.
yeah.
They can't get enough rate because of this acceleration in loss cost adjustment
What do
factors.
you think that lasts on a transportation?
In auto, I don't see any end to it. It's a disaster. No one's doing it profitably. And it's now become really a pure E&S play. It's just a very, very difficult. It's not just long haul trucking anymore,
Right,
or livery or shared economy. It's any risk that has a big fleet, right? So the need for a buffer, the need to increase the attachment points to open up the excess market. Those are challenges we get 100 times a day. It's a completely different environment when there's a fleet involved.
wow. As you think about, we talked a little bit about the MGA business. As you think about the brokerage business, what's something that you've been surprised at there over the last few years?
I would say the volume for sure, just the sheer volume and the scale and the scope of these platforms. And it's not just us, it's our two
Sure.
biggest competitors. The ability to build a multi-billion-dollar platform is new to the industry. And there's so much talent in the broking side now, so much training and developing going on, that the new model, if you will, is so much broader and deeper than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. It used to be, a broker and a couple of assistants, and now you have these 35-year-olds with 50 people on their team. I mean, that's a very common, platform for us. Our retail customers like it. It can
Sure.
provide better service. Those kinds of platforms get more business. They capture more business. They're more fleet-footed. They can get into these channels quickly and adjust. And, the speed of the industry has increased significantly, and the pressure to deliver these winning solutions quicker and faster and more precisely is a part of it. And so those that can react to that and continue to be able to move at a high rate of speed while handling all this volume are clearly the winners.
Yeah, one of the things that we've talked about is how the customer service expectations just continue to raise for everyone. What used to be reasonable turnaround, to getting the same day turnaround to hourly turnaround is kind of really what expectations are like for carriers. And you guys have obviously been on the leading edge of customer service, but I guess it's more of a statement, but where do you see that going?
I've always looked at speed to market as a critical, component of any good broker or underwriter's game.
Sure.
The ability to be ultra responsive and to be reactionary is always a separating quality.
It's a table stakes.
It is.
Yeah.
And much like the NFL, if you're running a 4-3, you make the team. If you're running a 4-5, you get cut. It's lightning fast precision. And retailers are very, very demanding about your reaction time and your ability to service these high volumes of business that are coming into the non-admitted channel. So this shift to mega teams and mega platforms, and it's always been a hub and spoke business, but today you have to be ultra big in these larger cities to have a chance to handle the volume that's coming from the retail market. And so we're constantly working on, broadening our capabilities without losing a step. right?
Right.
It's trying to increase our precision and our speed to market and everything we do.
Right. It's the best piece of advice you've ever received.
Go to bed earlier and get up earlier.
That's good. What's as much as you could share, what's next?
Growth, opportunity, huge opportunities to really shepherd in and welcome things like electronic trading, and small commercial, AI having a huge impact, I believe, on underwriting first, but ultimately in broking as
Are
well.
you seeing it yet?
We have pilots going,
Hmm.
I think, the data obviously is a big part of that, and we're still a relatively new company, so we've got lots of plans in place. I think we're industry leading in our
Hmm.
electronic trading platform capabilities already. So we see that playing an even bigger role in the consolidation of the use of delegated underwriting authority intermediaries.
Hmm.
You'll be left behind if you can't keep up from a technology standpoint and have some form of AI in your model.
Do you see it coming into brokerage as well?
I do. It just allows you to go faster and look at more accounts for
Mhm.
starters. So I think it'll be, in 3 to 5 years, it'll be an absolute in all these platforms.
What keeps you up at night then? I mean, I'm not, maybe not much if you're going to sleep early.
Yeah, not much, not much. I'm a good sleeper. Don't need an alarm clock, I've never had any issues with that. But, you worry about performing, right?
Sure.
That's just part of it. It's having
Sure.
a real awareness of performing at this high level
Right,
and never letting anyone down, right?
Right.
Your clients, your colleagues, your underwriters.
Sure.
There's a real commitment there.
sure,
And if you're not in it all the time and you're not 100% committed to that, I think it's a problem, right? So we
Yeah.
want people to be 100% in and committed to performing at the highest level for our customers, our retail brokers and agents, and our carrier partners.
sure. Well, hey, thanks a lot for the time. I really appreciate it.
Great to
Yeah,
be with you, Adam, as
Okay.
always. All
Yeah.
the best.
Thank you. Thanks for joining. Appreciate it.